we're back, baby. Horns up, Talking Texas podcast. Fisher DeSabos, DJ, Nikki Snacks Crider. Gentlemen, we have made it 10-1 onto the most anticipated game of the year. We went at home, senior day, took care of business against Kentucky, winning to the tune 31-14. Some stats for you guys. Penalties solid, 5 for 40. Time of possession, 34 minutes, 30 seconds. We won that. We lost 2 fumbles, which we didn't love to see, but ran the ball exceptionally well. Third down solid, better than it has been. Quinn wasn't perfect, but solid at moments. And the run game was really the tail of the tape on offense for us and Matthew Golden early. We head to A&M now as one of the top teams in the nation. Do you guys believe that we're in, win or lose? With that win, we're in. No?
I think it's more than 50%, yes, but not an absolute certainty that we are locked to be in if we lose to A&M because they lost to Auburn. And I think that means something. I'm also like, whether we are or we aren't, I'm taking the approach that we're not, so that we still play with that. I know I'm not out there playing with the guys, but that I fan with the chip on my shoulder that I want to win this game. I want to win the SEC championship either way. So hopefully we beat the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies. And that's not a question that we even have to further discuss, but it's valid. And obviously I think it was, said on game day that no matter what happens, if we beat Kentucky, we're likely going to be in the college football playoff. But again, as we've talked about, like, I want that bye week. I want to win the SEC championship because I want that bye week, and I want our guys to have a little bit of time to recuperate before they get into that gauntlet of 3 games in a row to get to the college football national championship.
If you lose against A&M and you don't make the SEC championship game, but you do make the playoff, you have a bye week. So either way you look at it, you're having a bye week.
But the timing's different though. It is.
It's a little different, yeah, but you still have a bye week.
We'd actually have 2 bye weeks. We'd actually have 2 bye weeks because we'll have a bye week before the SEC championship either way after this A&M game.
Yeah.
So Nick, that's the Army. You think that we're a lock?
Yes, I do. I think that if we go into Kyle Field in College Station and lose to A&M, a renewed rivalry game where we're only a 6-point favorite. It's like one of the lowest spreads that we've had all season long, besides maybe the Georgia game. And we go to their home turf, right? They're a team that was ranked 15th right before this week. I don't think they're going to consider that a bad loss for us. I think that they would still give us a little bit of credit because the 2 losses that Texas has are way more impressive by the measure than some of the other teams like Bama, or even Georgia for that matter, or LSU. They've had worse losses than us. And so if you go in, to A&M and lose, that's basically a Georgia loss, an A&M loss, and then you're a 2-loss Texas team that's still probably in the top 10. And by then you're an at-large bid. But I don't think that that's going to happen. Obviously, I think that we're going to beat A&M and then we're going to get to the SEC championship game because as you saw, A&M, blew it against Auburn. They had multiple chances to get back in that game. Obviously, it started off really ugly, down 3 touchdowns, but their guy dropped a game-tying 2-point conversion right in the breadbasket. Like, that sucks to see from anybody, as a former receiver. Like, that's a play that haunts you for the rest of your life. Like, I swear he will never live that down. He'll always think about that moment. That's terrible. You remember the drops more than you remember the catches in your career.
Except the good thing for him is that he has an opportunity to play against Texas Longhorns, and if they win that game, that's why
I'm glad
you can still get to I get that, but you can still get to the SEC championship. If you get to the SEC championship, if you're a 2-loss A&M team,
he definitely has an opportunity to rewrite the narrative for himself. However, I'm just saying as a player, I still remember drops that I had when I was in junior varsity. There's one that I specifically remember, we're in Belton or something. And there was it was a trick play where I was lined up as a lineman and I basically just release straight down the field and no one covered me. And this is sophomore year of high school. And the quarterback put it right in the breadbasket. And I would have walked in for a touchdown and just went right through my fingers. That's one that and that's a regular season game, So those things definitely haunt you forever. But I think that we're in no matter what. I think that we just had to take care of business against Kentucky, which we did on senior day. And basically we're going to punch our ticket. But we've seen crazier things happen, obviously. But right now, as it stands, we're the lone wolf at the top of the SEC. I mean, if we lose, then we're tied as a leading the SEC. So I don't know. I think that's just kind of my two cents in that. And there's also a world that we lose to A&M and we still make the college football playoff too. Or sorry, we make the SEC championship game as well, right?
No, Georgia's in.
Georgia's in for sure.
Georgia's
they had the head-to-head on us.
with Alabama losing. Georgia's locked in,
Okay, yeah,
and then it's us versus A&M.
Their last game is not in SEC. That's why.
Right, they play Georgia Tech.
If they lost, yeah, exactly. If they lost the last game of the season, then, but it's only SEC play.
I'm more aligned with
if they lose.
Candidly,
if Georgia Tech beats Georgia, then sure they get an SEC playoff game or the SEC championship game. But do they go to the college football playoff?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If they lose to this game, still matters a ton against Georgia Tech, their longtime rival, who has a solid quarterback, Haynes King, who used to play at Texas A&M. And if they lose that game and then they lose handily in the SEC championship, they're not in the playoff, in my opinion.
If they lose that game and they even win the SEC championship,
yeah, it's a 3-loss team.
They're get a bye.
Okay, but they're an automatic bid though. Still,
they're an auto bid, but they might not even get a bye because,
you're right.
1 loss ACC, 1 loss Big 12, Boise State, and Big 10.
Yeah,
they're not going to give the 3-loss SEC team who just lost to an ACC team the bye because the ACC just won that game. In my opinion, late in the season.
Yes, but then if
that's just blatant bias, then
but if they're beating,
that would be blatant SEC bias.
But if they're beating Texas and we're the number 3 team in the country, then it's not. You can argue against it being blatant.
I don't think we're going to be in this situation, but I think that there's a plausible route where the SEC doesn't get a bye, and that would be that.
There's a route. I don't think it's going to be the situation.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there is a plausibility where that you could make that argument. I think Georgia takes care of business. I think we see them ultimately, and I think I'm siding with Nick in the sense that Ole Miss blew it. They lost to Florida, who we beat the crap out of. I know DJ Lagway. There is a difference, but we still beat the brakes off of them. Then Alabama just lost to Oklahoma, who we beat the crap out of.
It wasn't just lost. We beat the crap out of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma beat the crap out of Bama.
Alabama didn't show up. So Bama's done. Ole Miss is done. You're Tennessee. You're probably like, thank God, all we have to do, and that's not an easy game, go in to Nashville and beat Vanderbilt, and then you're probably in as like the last at-large bid by the skin of your teeth. And then if you're Texas, you're 10-1. So even if you lose to A&M, you're still 2 losses, and you're probably in there with Tennessee as an at-large bid.
Right. And if you look at like the losses that Tennessee has versus the losses that we have, Tennessee lost to Kentucky.
Yeah, or Arkansas.
And sorry, you're right, Arkansas. I'm thinking of someone else. It's so confusing at this point. Who's lost to who and what teams have upset who?
Well, the only one that hasn't lost to anybody like that is us.
It's us.
You're the only team in Georgia that have not lost a game they're supposed to win. We've beaten every team we're supposed to beat. Georgia's 2 losses are Ole Miss and Alabama. At the end of the day, those are 2 brutal games on the road.
Both on the road. Yep.
So Ole Miss has lost to 2 teams they're not supposed to lose to. Bama, 2 teams. Tennessee lost to a team they're not supposed to lose to. LSU, forget about it. Yep. Quite frankly, we Toss and I were talking earlier, Nick. South Carolina is the monkey wrench you could even make the argument for because they've been the hottest team maybe and playing some of the most fun, exciting football, but they lost to Bama and Ole Miss. So the SEC is kind of cannibalized itself. So they probably can't make it. So things are pretty interesting. I think we're in. I think going to the Kentucky game itself, I was just so blown away with that last drive that we had. We were texting about it. That might have been one of the best drives of Sark's career. 14, 15 rushes, no passes, march right down the field, score, end the game, kill as much clock as you could humanly possibly imagine. Putting Wisner at I believe, a career high 158. Yeah. It's soundly at a career high 158. Tacking on Blue, who's walking around campus with a football in his arms. Hilarious when they do that. He added 96, and now both those guys are getting hot into a really important game and at the right time. And then defensively, again, like one of the things that I've been, beating the drum on week in and week out is, hey, can we get to the quarterback? And last week we did it, and this week we had 6 sacks.
Yep.
6 sacks and 12
I would
tackles
not
for
be
loss.
shocked. I would not be shocked if we had 6 sacks and we had one where like the first drive, their quarterback just fell down because he saw Anthony Hill coming. So that you can credit that a asterisk. There's probably another sack that should be going in the book for Anthony Hill. I would not be shocked next week if Trey Wisner gets less carries than Jaden Blue. I feel like they swap almost every single week, especially with Jaden Blue, trying to get the monkey off his back and start keeping the football in his arms. I feel like Sark is the type of coach to give a guy an opportunity to instill some confidence in him, right? He's been the guy for us this season. But yeah, I think honestly, that drive was something that I actually was about to discuss, is that I think this is a great game of adjustments on the offensive side of the ball. Because when we started this game, I didn't think we were going to be able to run the ball very well against this D line. I think they were a really big gap plugging D line, very experienced. They've got a couple of pros on that D line, especially in Deanne Walker, maybe a first round draft pick. I didn't think we were gonna be able to run the ball that much, but I think that we did a really great job of adjusting our play calls. And instead of running between the tackles, we were doing a lot of outside zones, a lot of trickery, a lot of pulling on the guards, which is, I think, something that would obviously come down the road anyway, but it wasn't like we were just getting stopped for 1 or 2 yards like it was the first couple of drives. We were busting out big 10, 15, 20-yard chunk runs. Trey's longest was 17. Jaden Blue's longest was 21. So that was something I was really impressed with. Obviously, Quinn was ailing for a little bit after he went down on that one run that he had and hurt his ankle, and not very mobile back there. Probably would have liked to see Arch come in, honestly, so we can give Quinn some time to take off his ankle. And it got kind of scary towards the end because like he wasn't able to move the ball at all. Really, he missed some throws, put the ball on the ground a couple of times. I mean, we had a stretch of plays where we basically fumbled the ball 3 times in 4 plays, and then the next drive, bad snap, ball on the ground again. So the ball's on the ground basically 4 times in a matter of like 6 or 7 plays, which is completely unacceptable when you're in this part of the game. Silas Bolden obviously mumps that punt as well. Like, not something I even consider about. That's probably like another 5 plays that the ball was on the ground. So not something that you want to see this late in the season. Corrections need to be made for sure, and on the focus part. And I'm glad that Jaden Blue's walking around with a football in his hands, because that's the only thing he can focus on. And once you focus on that type of thing, there's no way it's coming out the next game. Jarrett Gibson, I don't know what to say at this point in terms of his ball security. It's like every single game he gets in, fumble. He had 1 rush this game, one rush for 6 yards, and he fumbled. So it's a little troublesome to see. But on the receiving part, my guy Golden got kind of the game that I wanted to see out of him, just getting peppered with targets, especially early, kind of showing people that he's a legit number 1, in my opinion. I think he would benefit from staying here 1 more year just so he can get more love and be the guy. But yeah, I mean, like,
both guys could quite
well, yeah, but Bond's been like hobbling around, and so I feel like he's been losing a little bit of stock because he's not being able to showcase, what he's able to do. But if you thought it was a crowded receiving room this year, it's about to get a lot more crowded next year with our 5-star recruits coming in. And of course, Wingo's going to want more time. DeAndre Moore's going to want more time. Like, it's going to be an issue. I think Bond's going no matter what. If you're projected to be in first round, he's still projected a first rounder. He's going to go.
He'll go, but he's just been my new lamenting. I think you bring up some great points, Nick. My new lamentation on the team is, I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to use it for the show, is I need more Bond. I need more 007. He's been real quiet lately. And I know he's been dealing with some, nagging injuries, he missed a game, but I would love to see more 007. He's too explosive. He's too good. We're winning games. We're winning handily. We're winning convincingly, even if it doesn't feel like it at times. Like, we are taking care of business, so you can't really be that upset. And the defense is the engine that's driving this train. But personally, I think Bond's talent level can cater to more usage, and I would love to see him get the ball in open space more, maybe do something, and I think that would take our offense to the next gear because we're still missing that element of getting those kind of special playmakers, the Moores, the Wingos, the Bonds. Golden got it this game, but even still with 7 for 86, it wasn't like he exploded for 150. Like, we're missing that element of the game where one of our receivers just goes absolutely nuclear. Like we saw 80 and Xavier go last year. We're just missing that element.
I think it was important when you run for 250 yards on the ground. I'm not going to nitpick too much the receiving yards from the receiving room. And I think it was really important for this version of the Texas Longhorns offense to demonstrate that they can run against a solid D-line, as you mentioned, Nick. This is not – it's been something that's been questioned for our team the entire year. Can they rely – are they only going to have to rely on Quinn Ewers because they can't run the ball efficiently enough against quality opponents? And look, I know this team played Georgia really close, but they were also 4-6 coming to DKR. It's a little bit different when you're 2-1 or 2-2. Yeah, versus playing 4-6 on the road in Austin. Like, this is not the same team. Just as teams get better throughout the season, other teams, they lose focus. They lose steam because they know where their season is headed. And I would have liked, I mean, we didn't cover in this game by half a point, right? I think it was 17. It moved to 17.5, at least where I saw it right before kickoff. And that's what we win by. We win by 17. So just under. It's kind of like it's like there was a lot of good things, but there was mistakes and the mental focus, like you're talking about, Nick, like it just wasn't at 100% like where you'd want it to be before you play a really tough team on the road. Not to, like, throw in there that we haven't played a lot of games on the road. We've had the fortune on our schedule of playing most games at DKR. So I'm optimistic about
3 real road games.
Right.
Like, not including OU. Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Michigan. That's it.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about Kentucky. Like, Arkansas was kind of at this. Yes, they want to play spoiler. Yes, it's a rivalry game, but they were not in a position where they were competing for the SEC championship or being at the top of the conference. And obviously Michigan, we got them early. So I give us a ton of credit for that game because nobody knew what Michigan was going to be at that moment. They were ranked when we played them. We dominated them on their home turf. And a very impressive win in my mind, and one that's probably catching more flack than it should, just like in retrospect. Like, at the time, it was a huge win. It was the biggest game in college football that weekend, and we took care of business, absolutely. So resounding win. So I love that we ran for 250. I don't like that we were loose with the football. I don't like what I saw from Quinn because you want to get Bond more involved. Josh, you're talking about that. We targeted Isaiah deep down the field multiple times. Quinn loves that. He loves that lob ball. He loves that loosey-goosey air floater, like Dirk Nowitzki from 3. Like, why are you putting so much air under the ball? Like, you have to mix up the type of throws that you make, but you give DBs a lot of time to catch up to Isaiah Bond and his speed when you put so much air under the ball there. So it's just about making the right throw in the right moment. And we've continued to see, it's a good thing we could run the football in this game, because without his mobility, and Quinn's not very mobile even prior to the injury, we don't have any other options back there. He can't break out of the pocket and run for 5 yards. It's not going to happen. So we're in a bit of a predicament because I wanted to see Arch too, Nick. And when you texted, I had that exact same thought. I think a lot of Texas fans did. But we've also Sark's kind of handcuffed himself. He can't necessarily put Arch in these situations because then there's an expectation that's being built. And while I didn't necessarily feel that way when it happened way back when against Georgia, now we're getting into the point where momentum and where Quinn's mental space is way more important than it was against Georgia.
Yeah, but I think that if you were to get benched for Arch in that game specifically, it had nothing to do with performance, it had everything to do with injury. Saying like, hey man, look, you can't move back there. Let's give you a break. You know, like we've got it. We've got the lead in this game. I don't want to risk you getting injured even more. You're too important to us. So let's give Arch an opportunity and we'll close this one out and then we'll get ready for you to get healthy next year.
It's senior night too, and so they honored him as well. Like I'm aligned with what you're saying. Like, I don't want him to risk getting hurt, but we're running the ball. Like, we're running the ball.
To me, it's more of like
we're running the ball.
Captain hindsight, easy to say this now, but I kind of wish we had introduced looks throughout the season where Arch could come in, utilize his legs as another wrinkle for our offense.
So
I don't like
threat versus like
I don't like the reliance on that as an offense for an entire season, but he's so dangerous with his arm that it's not the same as like the Steelers throwing Justin Fields out there or like Michigan throwing Alex Orji out there.
Like the same. Like
it's kind of
it is the same a little bit.
It's kind of not though, because Fields runs every time he goes in the ball, like in the game. I'm talking about like the actual plays that they script when Fields is in there. It's a read option and he either gives it or he holds it. But with Arch, you really can run those receivers. It's more just like they don't do it. Like the Steelers don't let Fields let it loose.
But he could do it, which is like a part of the threat. Yeah, we don't have that established. I don't mind leaving Quinn in there. This is not going to be an easy game. Like we'll preview it throughout the week with Q and Jake Hubenek, but like I know we want it to be. I know we're favored, and I kind of like the spread where like 6 is a nice looking spread for me. But they have pros in their defense. Like they have pros in their defensive line. They have 2 guys. They have 1 guy that could be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, Nick
Scorton. Yeah, and then they have Shamar Stewart, who could be a top pick as well. So I don't know. Like I want all the screws to be tightened up going into this one because they're going to be tightened up for them. You know it.
Yeah, and this crowd's going to be crazy loud. And
I mean, that's a great point. The one of the amazing point that we've barely played any away games. Like,
well, it's part of the reason at the beginning of the season where we were like, we have a really favorable schedule and we need to take care of business, which we have done. But this is where we get tested. Like, this is a huge game for us.
How's that possible?
I don't know.
How is that possible? We played 3 away games.
Yeah.
Beats me.
But we're gonna see a running quarterback who's again, like we keep talking. We know we didn't see Lagway. I mean, that Florida. I texted you guys. I said I wish we had seen Florida with Lagway. I'm not upset by any stretch of the imagination as to what we did against the Gators in that game. We dominated. We did exactly what we needed to do. But that third string quarterback that transferred from Yale is a completely different guy. DJ Lagway is the quarterback of the future for Florida.
Yeah.
And a huge reason as to why they beat Ole Miss. Like Florida won that football game. Ole Miss didn't crumble in that game. I mean, they made mistakes, but Florida capitalized.
And what game was it where Lagway went down and that's how they
He went down against Georgia and it was a close game in the second quarter before he went down. And then in the second half, Georgia took over and won that game. So there's nothing we can do about it. We're dealt the hand that we're dealt with opponent quarterbacks, and we've taken care of what we needed to take care of. But this is a different guy that we're playing against Texas A&M. He can run, he can do a lot of different things, and we'll talk more about it, like you said, with Quan and with Jake. But we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us in this game.
The thing about, I saw something on Twitter, a fan basically saying, we got to be careful heading into A&M because obviously they come off this loss against Auburn, that they're going to be playing with nothing to lose, right? Like they're going to come out here for blood, which I don't necessarily agree with that. They still have a lot to lose. Like they still have the opportunity to make the college football playoff and the SEC championship game. So they're not going to be, balls to the wall just saying this is, nothing matters here. I also do think that their ego got hit a little bit because I feel like they're probably riding high, feeling like we're just going to take care of Auburn. We're looking to the next week. And they got hit in the mouth, I mean, obviously it looked closer than it really was, 41-43, 4 overtimes, but that should have never happened, right? So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I said this a while back preseason that this game means a lot to the fan bases, the rivalry, but none of these players know this rivalry, not even our players. Like, these kids were literally not even in middle school the last time this rivalry happened. They were in elementary school. Like that's how long it's been since A&M and Texas have played each other. So this is going to be a revamped rivalry that they're going to have to basically start themselves, but it means way more to the fans. So I think this game will be good. Like I said, we'll preview it, this week, but we're right where we need to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think
they do have nothing to lose. Like you are right. Like it's all on the table for them. They can still go to the CFP.
Right. No, I'm saying they do have things to lose.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you could
lose, yes.
You could talk yourself into any narrative of what they might be buying into and what we might be buying into. Like you literally could do it. You could say they just lost against Auburn. Now we've seen, they're down. Let's knock them out, right? They got knocked down. Let's knock them out. Like, let's come in and bring the hammer down on them. They're vulnerable. Take advantage of them. There's also we didn't want them to lose that game because now they've got a chip on their shoulder. Like you can literally
Well, that
play
was
out
their
every
slip
scenario.
up. Like that was their caught sleeping.
Right.
I mean, they got
And now
caught sleeping, but like whatever.
It could be their caught sleeping moment, but it could also be their fraud moment too, where it's like,
that's what I'm saying. It could be. It's like you can't worry about that.
Like,
you just have to be prepared.
If we're talking about strength of schedule and we're talking about impressive wins, impressive losses, like how impressed have we actually been with A&M's wins this season? Like the only big wins they had were against LSU, who we're saying as not that strong of a team anymore.
Fraudulent.
Missouri, who also fell
Fraudulent.
Yeah, exactly. Like those are the only big wins that they have all season long. They lost to Notre Dame, they lost to South Carolina, and they lost to Auburn.
Frauds.
Yeah, close game against Notre Dame. I think the term fraudulent, like, look, Josh, I know you like. I know you. Well, hold on.
Fraud. They're fraudulent.
Hold on. You like to say that Brian Kelly's a terrible coach. You like to say that Lane Kiffin's a terrible coach.
I didn't say Lane Kiffin's a terrible coach ever.
That he crumbles in the biggest moment.
He did.
Those guys do, but let's also be realistic about how difficult it is to win in college football. There are not a lot of coaches that have actually gone all the way. In fact, there's only 2 really that are in college football coaching right now who have won like in the last 5 years because Nick Saban is no longer here. It's Kirby Smart and it's Dabo Swinney. And guess what? He's had a hard time staying at the top. So for any of these teams, we can say that A&M's loss against LSU is fraudulent because LSU is fraudulent. But at the time, they were 2 ranked teams playing each other.
Their loss is fraudulent. I'm just saying they're a fraudulent team as in terms of a contender. We thought this team should be a top-tier contender. Last year, Brian Kelly had Jaden Daniels and 2 first-round wide receivers and didn't sniff the college football playoff.
Just because you have a quarterback and players doesn't mean that you're a lock to compete for a college football championship. Caleb Williams was the Heisman frontrunner 2 years in a row, and that USC team sucks.
He should be because he's staying in the ACC and he won't commit with the portal. He won't do anything with the portal or NIL. So it's his fault. Like Dabo Swinney, like it's his fault that Clemson's not getting back there. I think that the Mizzou team was supposed to be a top 7 team, and they're nowhere near that. LSU was supposed to be like a top 10 program, and they've lost gimme games. I think Lane Kiffin's a really good coach. I don't think he's great yet. This is an elite team. How many guys are they going to have drafted on that defense? 5, 6? Plus the offense.
Just because you have the talent doesn't mean that you make it happen. We saw that. We saw that for a long time with our own team, where we were recruiting at a top 10 level and we were winning not even 8 games. So all that to say is I just think fraudulent sometimes is a label that is used a lot, and it is used with a frequency that if you use it so many times, it doesn't actually mean what it should mean, which is someone who is a total phony. Like
FSU.
Yes.
No, they stink.
But what were they ranked preseason? That's fraudulent.
That's just a complete disaster. And Mizzou to me is fraudulent because they were ranked a top 7 team, and are they ranked even anymore?
No,
they're not. And I don't think many people were saying, okay, this Mizzou team might be good, but out of all of the 5
they're ranked 23rd right now.
Out of all of the 5 ranked teams preseason going in that were like top 15 in the SEC, I think we all 3 and Quan had the most questions about a Mizzou team being lifted that high, right? We were kind of like, okay, they're high, Tennessee's high, Ole Miss is high, but let's see with Mizzou.
LSU and Mizzou were both top 10 teams, and LSU's not in the rankings.
At the beginning
14.
of the season? No, they were in the teams.
I'm looking at preseason right now. Do you want to hear it?
No, please.
Yeah. Number 1 was Georgia. 16, 17.
Number 1 was Georgia preseason. 2 was Ohio State. 3 was Oregon. 4 was Texas. So they've gotten the top 4 pretty good. 5 was Bama, 6 was Ole Miss, 7 was Notre Dame, 8 Penn State, 9 Michigan, 10 Florida State, 11 Mizzou, 12 Utah, 13 LSU, 14 Clemson, 15 Tennessee, 16 Oklahoma, fraudulent, 17 Oklahoma State, 18 Kansas State, 19 Miami, 20 Texas A&M, 21 Arizona, 22 Kansas, 23 USC, fraudulent, 24 NC State, 25 Iowa.
There's a bunch of teams that missed. Absolutely.
Well, it's obviously
State, the worst. Maybe
safe
Florida State.
Safe by the AP to not try and guess which of the Power 5, Power 4 conference teams
Yeah.
are going to be the ones. Again, we talked about it before. The preseason ranking is like, you make it, who really cares? You're making it out of thin air. And guess what? The top of the teams who we thought were going to be the contenders are still the contenders, and the teams we believe are going to win the national championship. And everyone else, it's like, okay, we can say you're the number 9 team going into the season, but we don't really know until you play games.
Well, 9 through 13 is blown it. USC blew it. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State's lucky Florida State exists, because otherwise they'd be the biggest drop off of the year. They're like 3-8.
Yeah, they're having a really bad year, and it's still Gundy there, and they have Bowman, who's been their quarterback for quite some time.
Ollie Gordon's
still there. I'm just saying that, like, if we're calling every SEC team that's not going to be in the SEC championship fraudulent,
I didn't call it.
Then
we're supposed to be good.
Then it also feels like, okay, how much ammo do we have to talk about what we've been talking about at the beginning of the show, where we're like, well, we're beating the teams that we're supposed to beat, like,
and those teams are losing to those teams.
In some cases, but in other cases not. Like
Mizzou is not. Mizzou is like at 1.5. Like,
it benefits us for the rest of the SEC to be looked at in a favorable way, because we've only beaten teams that are either barely bowl eligible or not bowl eligible in the SEC. So
I believe we've beaten the most bowl eligible teams. Is that correct?
That is correct. But
we
have tied with 2 other teams, Georgia being one of them. I'm just saying, like,
I thought we were solely one.
No, we are not solely one. We're tied with 2 other teams.
Do you guys want to hear really quickly the playoff predictor percentages right now?
Yes. We're tied with SMU and with Penn State.
According to ESPN, we have a 98% chance to make the college football playoff. So they believe that if we lose this game, we're making it.
I don't like that, to be honest. I hope whatever that predictor number is thrown as far away from campus as possible, personally.
It's on ESPN. I believe, right, Nick? Is that where you're getting it?
Yeah, ESPN. So in the playoff predictor, it gives you outcomes, right? So if I pick Texas A&M to win this game, if like just based on the simulation, it gives us an 88% chance of making it still.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, given our current ranking by the CFP, I think that tracks. I would expect it to have dropped a little bit, but as I said, I believe we're more than 50%, even if we lose this game. But again, as you mentioned, Nick, like, our guys don't know this rivalry, but certainly, like, both sides are going to be teaching and giving the history to all the players to let them know what this means. And also, if you're a player and you hear that a school is a rival, as soon as it gets chippy out on the field, it gets amplified 10%, right? Like, as soon as even the fact of you knowing in the back of your head that it's a rivalry game, you take one hit and one guy says one thing, you're locked in. As a competitor, like, it doesn't change. You're not like, well, this rivalry doesn't mean anything to me. At that point, you're like, okay, I'm out for blood and we want to dominate this team. Same thing as if you're playing a rivalry or a non-rivalry, but I think it gets amplified with the rivalry game. And you're on the road and you have to have that mentality. I just, like, we got to take it seriously. We will.
I mean, I think it's completely being taken seriously. I don't think we're coming in like we come into the Kentucky game where it's like a cupcake.
Yeah. I mean, championship teams come into every game with the exact same mentality. So I hope we came into that Kentucky game.
I think we have, to be completely honest.
I think
like we said, we're the only team that's taking care of business when we're supposed to. The only team that we messed up on was Georgia, and obviously that's not surprising. That
is the team you lose to. If you remember,
it was just at home though, and it was that first half.
It was just bad. One first half that got you. It was one. You know why it's so blatant? Because it's one first half. That's the only half where we didn't really look like a championship team. Outside of that, we've looked pretty much championship caliber. We've taken care of business against, you're saying, a strong SEC, even if the teams we haven't beat are the cream of the crop. We've beaten teams that have beaten the cream of the crop.
I'm just trying to say, hey, those teams that we've beaten, like, I think they're good quality football teams.
Yeah, they're solid.
So I'm not going to call the teams that are better than them frauds, because that makes the teams that we beat look even worse.
I'm saying frauds in the sense of what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. I also just think, like, as I said at the beginning, it's really, really damn hard to win in college football.
It is hard.
And so to call,
especially with 12 teams that are capable of doing it, it's just going to get harder.
Yeah.
I did by the way, to answer an earlier question on the playoff predictor, if A&M beats us and loses to Georgia, they're apparently cooked.
I think it matters how they lose, but I'm with that.
It's kind of interesting.
I mean, if they lose on a game losing
three-loss team.
if the field goal at the end of the game, it's like I'm not gonna.
That's a 3-loss team, though.
Yeah,
I don't think a 3-loss team's making it in.
I hope. I'm praying to the Lord above that USC delivers on Notre Dame. And that way Notre Dame has 2 losses, 2 not great losses. Their out of conference schedule is not great. And they don't have a conference championship to die on. So that's
Miller,
that's what I'm.
What are they going to roll out Miller? Are they going to say, "Hey, Miller, we need you for one game"?
No, they got the other kid now who's been fine. I mean, I'm that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for by some miracle in the rivalry games, USC exposes Notre Dame.
I don't mind Notre Dame being in there this year.
No, F them. I don't like.
I think it's cool for college football playoff if like they're in it. You know,
we're gonna have the big dogs.
Well, I think ultimately Notre Dame belongs right now. They're a top 12
they're in it, yeah.
So they should be.
I think
they've walloped everyone they're supposed to. They've one bad loss. That was against second week of the season, Northern Illinois.
Bad loss.
Yeah,
second is the first loss of the year.
Those are like, I feel like if you get upset early in the season, it's like, okay, we just were not ready for this season yet. But every other game they've handled. I mean, Louisville was a team that like we all thought was pretty good this season. They beat them. A&M, we're talking about right now, beat them. Navy was a ranked team, beat them. Georgia Tech, like they've put together a really good season. We just said that they could potentially upset Georgia, like beat them. Army, undefeated, beat them. Like I don't think this team is that bad as they normally are.
No, I don't think they're bad. I just don't like them, and I think that I don't want them in. that's just it.
So if neither, okay. So if what you're saying is true, Nick, about you don't believe that any 3-loss team from the SEC will make it. So
I don't think any 3-loss team at all will make it.
Well, if no 3-loss team from the SEC
doesn't
make it, then no team is 3 losses making it. Yes.
So
who all would be
if we beat Georgia in the SEC championship game? That begs the question:
a 3-loss Georgia team is going to make it. I'm just gonna.
I think they're the only one. They're the only one that can.
What if I don't know, man. Like, what if South Carolina dominates Clemson?
What if Georgia loses to us and they're a 3-loss team and Bama's like?
I still think Bama has a prayer of a chance.
But Bama beat Georgia.
Mind.
I don't know. I think the Bama loss last week against OU is just like they can't get in after that.
That was vile.
They can't get in, or they shouldn't get in.
They shouldn't get in.
I mean, like if you're the playoff committee, you're like you literally put up 3 points against
Oklahoma,
a 6-loss Oklahoma team. No.
I don't know. Committees messed up things all the time. That's like their MO. They mess shit up. So it would be. Well, the interesting thing is like not only that the SEC teams lost, but also Big 12 teams lost. So that conference is an absolute.
Colorado's cooked.
So now it seems like only one team from that conference is going to make it.
Colorado's not cooked. They have a 3-way tie right now for the Big 12.
What do they need to happen to go to the championship game?
I mean, they need a win, of course, against Oklahoma State, which they should. Actually, it's a 4-way tie right now.
It's a 4-way tie.
Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona
State. Who has the head-to-head with BYU?
They all played different teams though this last week, so like they foreseeably like Colorado could win, all these teams could lose,
and then they're in Big 12 championship.
Then they'd be in. They basically need 2 of these 4 teams, 2 of the 3 teams to lose, and they need to win. Which like Iowa State plays against Kansas State, that's not a gimme. Arizona State plays against Arizona, that's a rivalry game. BYU plays against Houston, which like hard to say really with Houston.
I mean, toughest draw I would say is like Iowa. That's a tough matchup for Iowa State. On the road in Manhattan.
I do not want to see Arizona State in there anymore. I was about it before this weekend, but what they did, their fans rushing the field 1 second left on the play clock, like you could just see the ASU frat boys like yelling at the players, yelling at like the coaches, like their head Arizona State's head coach was like getting all ridiculous too. Like I do not want to see that team in there. They do not deserve it.
All right. Well, Tataroa McMillan needs to step up and
Off game.
dominate them.
Because right now it's Arizona State versus
Arizona
Iowa
State,
State.
as long as they win, they're in. Yeah.
Both Arizona State and Iowa State.
Correct.
And then the ACC is.
I mean, it's like
Miami
BYU.
winning in.
BYU absolutely blew it.
I know.
BYU's ahead of Iowa State right now.
I think as it stands, it says Iowa State and Arizona State would.
I'm just looking at the standings, but maybe.
By the way, the losses all suffered by Kansas. Shout out Charlie Strong. Kansas beat all three of them in a row: Colorado, BYU, and Iowa State.
Yeah. if Miami, correct though, Josh, about your ACC point earlier. If Miami beats Syracuse in Syracuse, then they will play SMU for the ACC title game.
That's cool.
Express, baby. That is cool.
Good for SMU.
Oh,
honestly, good for both those teams. I'm not gonna lie. Like Miami's had a tough time these last like 20 years trying to get back to the U, and like this is the most promising their season's ever looked. I definitely don't think they're in the same tier as us or any of these SEC teams, but it's good for these programs to finally like figure it out a little bit.
They went to the portal. They got the top guy. He worked. That's great. Like that's how you get back in this day and age in college football. I mean, you could say the same thing about SMU, except it's not 20 years. It's like
40,
50. Yeah. They got the death penalty.
Yeah. I mean, if Miami loses to SMU though in the conference champion, so this is where it gets tricky because it's like, should a team catch flack for losing a conference championship game? And if Miami loses to SMU, it will be a conversation as to whether or not they'll be in the college football playoff.
It's based on the rankings, though. Like it's based off of like where the college football playoff has you ranked. So
yeah,
like if what's Miami like number 8? Like if the number 8 Miami team loses in the college or in the SC or so many different terms in the ACC championship game, then they get bumped out because they're 8. If they were 4 or if they were 2 or 3, like then maybe they survive.
But it's like if they're the 8 seed and they're losing their conference championship against an 11 seed team or a 10 seed team or a 9, whatever SMU is at the time, should Tennessee, who's 13, jump ahead of them, who's then 8 losing to 9? Like that's where it gets. We just don't know how the committee's going to weigh these losses in the conference championships until it happens. And then at that point, you know that they get to say, we make whatever rules we want to make.
Yeah.
And we seed the teams where we want to seed them. And that's where this gets really convoluted and tricky and divisive and where people are going to be upset.
We're playing a lot of hypotheticals, but I really rather play this game after this week because so much could happen. Like this is not a gimme game for Miami. Like they have to beat Syracuse at Syracuse, who's 8-3. Like they're a good team. There's a lot of stuff at play this week.
I mean, Clemson plays. We're talking about the hottest SEC team,
South Carolina.
Huge game.
And if Miami loses, they're automatically in the ACC championship.
Clemson is. Yes, that's correct.
Because it's an out of conference.
Right, because Miami would have 2 conference losses. Yeah.
My brain hurts. I'm excited that it's Thanksgiving, and then I
really hope Michigan can knock off Ohio State. It's one last season present for us.
I think that chips sail.
Well, then you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out and call Ryan Day fraudulent. That's what I'm going to say.
You should.
If that happens.
You should.
He can't beat Michigan.
Can't beat Michigan.
He'll be in the college football playoff. He'll be okay.
Fisher DeSablos, DJ.
Yeah.
Oh man, guy doesn't want to play hypotheticals, and we're about to close out. Throws the last crazy hypothetical.
He would. They would still be. They'd be in the Big Ten championship. They'd be fine.
I think no, they won't, because Penn State will be.
Oh yeah, but then exactly. Then an at-large Ohio State. They're like the Georgia though. It's like it doesn't.
Yeah, you're right.
I think they're in.
You're right.
Yeah.
Fisher DeSablos, DJ, Nicky, Snacks Credit. I'll see you guys later. We'll see you another time. Huck 'em horns.